Welcome to meeting number 124 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Official Languages. Once again, for those of you in the room, there's a little card on the table explaining what can happen with acoustic incidents. So when I don't speak unless I give you the floor, pursuant to standing orders, we are resuming our Standing Order 1083F and the motion adopted by the committee on April 29, 2024. We will continue our study of the continuum of minority language education. I'd like to welcome our witnesses who will be with us for the first hour. From the Conseil scolaire catholique de Nouvelle-Ontario, we have Mr. Paul Henry, retired Major Director of Education and Secretary-Treasurer. He is appearing by video conference. And we also have from the Yukon Francophone School Board, Mr. Jean-Sébastien Blais, the President. And he is accompanied by Marc Champagne, General Manager, appearing also by video conference. So I'd like to welcome everyone. I'll explain to you how it works. I give you each 5 minutes for an opening address. So after that, we'll have enough time to have all the political parties ask you questions. Each political party will have time to ask you questions and hear your answers. We'll begin with Mr. Henry from the Conseil scolaire catholique de Nouvelle-Ontario. The floor is yours for 5 minutes. Please go ahead. Mr. Chairman and members of the Standing Committee on Official Languages, bonjour, good day, Annie. My name is Paul Henry. I'm a retired Major and Director of Education and Secretary-Treasurer of the Conseil scolaire catholique de Nouvelle-Ontario, located on the traditional territory designated in the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 of the Atikamek, Anishinaabeg, and Wabanaki First Nations. More specifically, we're located in the Trans-Canada Highway 17 corridor, passing through Sudbury East, Greater Sudbury, Algoma, Michipicoten, Wawa, and Chapleau. Franco-Catholic school territory of over 20,000 square kilometers, stretching from Warren to Horn-Payne. I'm currently in my 33rd year in Franco-Ontarian education, including the past 5 years at the helm of CSC Novalon, and I'll be retiring in the spring of 2025. Thank you for this invitation and this important and unique opportunity to share with you my perspective as a seasoned educator and administrator on official language issues in Canada. My brief presentation will cover a number of issues that I consider to be of the utmost importance to me, with a view to guaranteeing and accentuating by and for Francophones in minority communities while respecting our linguistic duality in accordance with Section 23 of the 1982 Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Fundamentally, the governance of my Catholic School Board is decisive and must be highlighted. Let us now turn to some critical issues in the form of pillars for discussion, which follows, namely, 1, financing French language education as a first language. Federal government funding to the provinces, and particularly in Ontario, is not always distributed equitably for the 12 French language councils and the Consortium du Centre Jules Léger. We increasingly feel that in Ontario, the one-size-fits-all concept is being applied without our knowledge. This kind of approach is discriminatory, unfair, and unequal for us versus our English-speaking counterparts. If we don't, our students, learners, parents, guardians, elected officials, and staff will be the losers now and in the future.
Un instant, M. Henry. Un instant, M. Henry. J'arrête votre horloge. Un instant.
Now it works. Yeah, it's okay.
Numéro 2, le dossier de la petite enfance pour assurer un continuum d'apprentissage M12. Récemment, le gouvernement fédéral a accordé, par le biais du patrimoine canadien et en collaboration avec le ministère de l'Éducation de l'Ontario, un financement accru de 4,2 millions de dollars à mon conseil scolaire pour nous appuyer avec une expansion importante au niveau de la mise sur pied d'une nouvelle garderie dans notre nouvelle école en construction dans les secteurs de Val-Thérèse, Hanmer et Capreol. Nous remercions à nouveau le gouvernement fédéral pour cet apport financier considérable. En fait, 88 nouvelles places seront actualisées dans cette garderie moderne, comprenant des poupons, des bambins et des enfants d'âge préscolaire qui débuteront leur apprentissage dans un milieu scolaire francophone catholique, langue première. Ce financement important, critique et extraordinaire nous permettra de répondre à une demande criante de places convoitées en milieu scolaire pour justement appuyer nos futurs parents et futurs
parents and students, since waiting lists are currently onerous. It goes without saying that the federal government, in collaboration with the provinces, is strongly encouraged to continue this practice of offering much-needed funding support through the OLP. Experts confirm that exposing our future students earlier to French as a first language is a determining factor in the eventual success of our K-12 students. 3. Violations of Article 23 and disrespect for our governance in French language. The 1990 Maillet ruling confirms the right of Francophones to manage their own schools. This decisive right has been enshrined by the Supreme Court of Canada, more specifically through Section 23 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms of 1982, which nevertheless remains a tool of first legal instance to ensure our governance within our French language school boards. We have noted that governments do not always respect this. Recently, various legal affidavits filed in the Ontario Court of Justice have made it clear that French language school boards are at risk when it comes to underfunding of transportation and the allocation of new capital projects, to name but a few. Importantly, many of these boards are currently in a deficit situation due to underfunding. Once again, I reiterate how important it is for all of us to have our fair share of the market and to be adequately funded for the future of our students and the survival of our French language schools, our first language. 4. Conceptual framework for the educational leadership development. For several years now, the Conseil ontarien des directions de l'éducation en langue française, the CODELF, has been calling on the Ontario government to allocate funds to school boards to set up leadership and mentoring programs to support senior managers and managers, schools and services within the boards themselves. It would be desirable for the government to prioritize one-time funding to ensure an adequate and well-prepared leadership succession. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Perhaps during questions, you will have time to expand on your statement. Now we'll hear from the Yukon School Board. I believe it's Mr. Blais. He is going to speak for 5 minutes. Good morning to everyone. I'm very happy to be here along with Mr. Champagne to appear before you today to talk about funding for French language. I am speaking from the Awachin Nation, the Kowachin Nation, and the Konondan Nation. And I would like to thank them for their support. My presentation will be divided into 3 parts: early childhood, right to the post-secondary education. Yukon is the only place in Canada whose Francophone demographic weight has not decreased in the last 50 years. On the contrary, it's increased by 87% since 1977. With this steady growth in the Yukon's French-speaking population, needs are increasing in both urban and rural areas, And if we are to maintain this growth, we must have the means to support French language education from early childhood through to post-secondary education. As far as kindergarten to grade 12 is concerned, the Francophone community needs to have access to our language and culture. We have 2 French language schools in the Whitehorse community, the École Émilie Tremblay and the Centre Scolaire Secondaire Communautaire Paul-Émile Mercier. And in Dawson City, we have the Confluence program, which offers education from grades K to 4 to 5. In addition, we have École Nomade, a virtual school that offers services to families who are homeschooled or who don't have access to a French language school. In total, we now have 403 students in our schools, an increase of over 75% in the last 10 years. As far as funding is concerned, particularly from the Official Languages and Education Plan, well, we continue to have a serious challenge. Although the latest action plan on official language announced an increase in funding, we're seeing a decrease in the amount allocated per student. This is a concern as the needs of French language schools in minority settings continue to grow. To meet these growing challenges, it's imperative that per student funding through OLIP not only be restored to previous levels, but also increased to better support Francophone communities. We also think that we have to be funded properly, and we have to take into consideration once or twice per year the fact that we have to deal with maintenance. We have to turn to federal funding. And the users of the OLEP of the school board are involved. Right now, we have a systematic problem with respect to the school board, meaning that the territories and the provinces, we think that we need to increase the amounts needed. There is a lack of equity and vitality, between the territory and the province. The cost of living is very high here in the north. In Toronto, they get more money than what is invested in Whitehorse. In 2024, the cost of living in Whitehorse compared to other provinces such as Alberta is 22% higher. In terms of food costs, it's 22% higher. So equity is something that has to be taken into account when you're dealing with the North. I would remind you also that the census shows you have to base things on the census and just not on estimates. We have to really take a look at our demographic weight, and we have to, it's because of the data, such as that provided by the census, that we were able to have an increase so that the Confluence program was able to go ahead. I would also like to say that in terms of post-secondary education, we need investments so that students will have a future, so that they can continue their education in French. So thank you very much. The next step, for those of you who are new here, we will have a 6-minute round for all of the political parties. We'll begin with the official opposition, the Conservatives. So the first to speak will be Mr. Godin, who has 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Blais, Mr. Champagne, for being present here. Mr. Blais, first of all, I don't know what's happening in the Yukon. I don't know what the recipe is, but you're getting good results. Can you explain in a few words what are you doing to achieve such progress for Francophones?
Well, the first thing is to have high-quality educational programs to make sure that children have the quality that they need and that they have the good teachers. We need qualified teachers that are there for the students. And I would remind you that I talked about infrastructure. We need high-quality infrastructure as well. Parents need to be confident that they have that in place. So we need this for our community. What I could say, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, is that the provincial or territorial government, in your case, has to be cooperative and obviously wants to work in the interests of the Francophone community. Yes, we have good relations with the Yukon government. There's been but if there is a change in the government team, then we don't know if we'll have that same collaboration. I don't know if Mr. Champagne would like to speak because he works with the government on these issues. Well, often our relations do depend on the goodwill of people. It isn't necessarily codified. We have agreements, and we would like to have the process codified when it comes to consultations and funding for education services for Francophones in the Yukon. So these relationships can be fragile. A lot of the gains that we have achieved in the Yukon result from the support that we've had from the federal government. Recently, we opened a community secondary school. Unfortunately, I have to interrupt you because I have very little time. But I can see that you have good cooperation with the territorial government. Mr. Blais? Provincial, probably. I think you should give me a little bit of extra time. Mr. Blais, I would like to hear what you have to say about the rights holders and the fact that in the legislation there needs to be a clear count of the rights holders. So can you make this distinction between the benefits of an actual count as opposed to an estimate? Yes, well, we don't have a large Francophone population, and so if that is the case, then it depends on the statistical methodology used. We need to have an actual count so that we have an exact number, and that way people can make the choice to live in a rural area. We just need to have a better understanding, and therefore we need to have the facts. So you want the accurate numbers. Thank you. I would have a lot of other questions, but I want to ask a question, Mr. Henry. Thank you, Mr. Henry, for being there. I just have a couple minutes. You are the first and only one who has filled out our survey, so thank you very much. You are certainly setting a good example. Mr. Henry, can you talk about the benefits of an agreement for education in the second language? So I want to make the distinction between second language learning and first language instruction for Francophones in your area. I work in a French school board this is French as a first language, and we want to provide services to parents. In our school board, we have a very interesting situation when it comes to recruitment. We have a lot of teachers who come from the Caribbean, from Africa, and so on. But the challenge is that when they come to Canada, they are steered toward English-speaking school boards in Toronto and Ottawa and other places. In Sudbury, the situation is a bit different because we have local institutions at the primary, secondary, and post-secondary level, and so parents do have somewhat of a choice. But we need to encourage, when we have situations where students come from those countries, we need to encourage them, if they are French-speaking at the outset, to be taught under a French school board. Some parents, though, choose an English school board where there's an immersion program. And sometimes those immersion programs tend to be to close because they don't have enough funding. Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. So that was much more than 6 minutes, but I'm just going to suspend a minute because I think we have a vote in the House. Do we need to suspend? Oh, in 30 minutes. Okay. So before going further, I want to see if we have unanimous consent to go to 25 minutes. Okay, 20 minutes more then. So we have 20 minutes. So I think we can do the 3 other rounds of questioning. I'm sorry, but this is the reality of our lives here as parliamentarians on Parliament Hill. We will now go to the next round of questions. Mr. Lightbound, you have 6 minutes, please. Thank you very much. My questions will first be for one of our witnesses, but I want to thank both Mr. Blais and Mr. Anki for being here representing Manitoba and Yukon. Mr. Blais, you represent Yukon, and I want to say hello to a friend of mine through you. Now, you have talked about your special situation. Are you receiving the federal funding that has been promised? Thank you for that question. For special projects for the Mercier School, we did get $9 million from the federal government. So for specific projects, we can sometimes negotiate increased funding, but from what we understand, the program funding does not require any special consideration for the fact that we live in the north and have special situations. So that should be the case. We have a higher cost of living, for example. It costs more to develop programs, to build schools, and so on. So we don't think that there is project funding that takes that into account. Now, you talked about the cost of living, and we know that it is higher in the Yukon and Whitehorse to build. And what difference does that make in managing and building schools? You talked about the Mercier School. So how different is it? What are the cost differences between building in Yukon or elsewhere? Well, I understand that it costs 50% more to build a school in the Yukon. I think Mr. Champagne could say more. Yes, it cost almost double to build the Mercier School when we look at the construction cost per square meter, so twice as much as it would cost in Ontario or BC. So there was special funding that was provided by the federal government that took that into account for the Mercier School. You also have funding under the program, under the OLMC program, or the OLEP program. Now, in your answer earlier, you talked about the need to be consulted to a greater extent by Heritage Canada, and this hasn't been happening with the Yukon government. Are you getting adequate consultation by the Yukon government? Well, the federal government should consult more with us. We don't have much consultation with Heritage Canada, but because it's been a very long time since we've had such consultation. But how can we provide better information? Obviously, it's important to have consultation with the provincial or territorial government because we sign an agreement with them, but the federal government should be following more closely how the money is spent. Mr. Champagne, you would like to say something? We have good relationships right now with the territorial government when it comes to negotiations and consultation, but nothing is codified, and therefore the situation is not necessarily guaranteed. Anything could change in the Yukon. I would share my time, since we're going to have an interruption, with Mr. Dalton. Since we are going to have a vote, I won't have the chance to speak in the second round, and so I want to congratulate you. I visited your school last year. Your volunteers and teaching staff do an exceptional job in the school and overall. Mr. Henry, thank you for your service, too, to our country. And you were one of the first, or the first, to answer our survey. I don't have very much time, but you talked about the funding formula that was not stable, and the 6-year period of it. We talked about 2023, and then the steps taken with the federal government to try to get the federal government to work more closely with school boards and not just with the provincial and territorial governments, and that they should treat the school boards more fairly. Could you tell us how the federal government could work more closely with the school boards themselves? Thank you for that question, Mr. Seke. I will just say a few things. Governance, first of all. We know that this is part of our Canadian Constitution under Section 23. The school boards in French-speaking, or French as a first language school board, are elected to manage the education system, and that is in our Constitution. But the provinces don't respect this extra role that we have. For example, the resources we need for our students are best decided on by the teachers in primary and secondary schools. In some cases, and I'll give you an example, and this is why I was referring to the one-size-fits-all process that usually applies. If decisions are made in an English school board, then they tend to be transferred to the French school board, even if they don't suit the needs. I have to move on because we only have 6 minutes each. The third question will be from the Bloc Québécois. For 6 minutes, please go ahead. Mr. Beaulieu. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My first question is for Mr. Henry. Following up on the previous question, the right to manage your own schools, you said that your rights have not been respected because often you will have school textbooks that are used in English schools and then they are simply translated into French. Yes, that's one example. There have been discussions that I won't reveal right now because we are trying to take recourse to protect our interests, but in French-speaking Ontario, because I wanted to speak about our own province, we are talking about Francophones studying in their French language. We have academics and others who support us to ensure that we have adequate resources that meet and exceed even the needs of our students. And other issues that I raised earlier, and I mentioned them in the survey, was that when it comes to transportation costs, our rights are not being respected compared with Anglophone students. We have 20,000 square kilometers in one school board. So when you think about the cost of fuel, insurance, they have spiked since the pandemic. My colleague earlier talked about capital funding, especially in an area where we have to beg and plead to have our own buildings. This is a problem. Well, just before you go further, when you talk about transportation, since you have a larger area, you need to transport students further, and so that costs you more than other school boards. The funding formula, I can't remember how much it is exactly per student, but I have students who have to do an hour and a quarter in the morning and at night. They have to come from east of Sudbury to come to Sudbury. But for Anglophone students, it would be a maximum of 30 minutes. So the challenge we have is to recruit and maintain our students in the French-speaking boards, and it's harder because of those challenges. All of us work within a transportation consortium. There are 4 school boards sharing this consortium in the greater Sudbury area. And over the past 2 years, we've been working to update and renew our contracts for these school buses. We know that in Ontario, in Ottawa, that area, we've had an increase of up to 46%. So when we have school buses that are, of course, more expensive, and all of these costs add up as they increase. First language French school boards are known for their good management of their funding. I can say that we have a small surplus and that we are the only school board in the country to have such a surplus. So we are very fiscally responsible. We have to work to build new schools and so on, but we do want to be very careful with the funding we have. There's another important issue I want to bring up, and that is the issue of allocation of construction projects over this area of 20,000 square kilometers. We might have 1 or 2 English schools being built and none for Francophones. And this makes it very difficult for us to serve our parents and students. when you talk about unfairness to French-speaking students, and you compare with students, Anglophone students studying French as a French language, can you make a comparison with immersion programs and your own? Well, my professional opinion after 33 years is that there is a lot of unfairness when we look at how we manage our school. We should be able to have a larger share of the market. Without having exact figures, I can certainly tell you that there is some unfairness.
Thank you. Now, a question for the Yukon. There's no post-secondary education in the Yukon, so what happens then? In 30 seconds, we don't have, in French, Mr. Beaulieu, our students have to go outside of the territory in order to pursue their education in French. But we are working on a community project that provides training programs. But that's for a few years from now. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. One last round, Ms. Ashton. Before the vote, Ms. Ashton of the NDP. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our witnesses. I'm very pleased to have witnesses from the Northern Ontario and from the Yukon. And here at our committee, we've talked about the challenges that are specific to minority communities in the North, particularly in terms of education in French. I'm familiar with the situation here in northern Manitoba, so I'd like to thank you for what you've shared with us today. It's important that we hear northern voices talk about this issue. I have a question for either Mr. Blais or Mr. Champagne about the reality in the Yukon. Can you talk to us about the scarcity of teachers for early childhood education and right from JK to the high school level? I'll let Mr. Champagne respond. In the Yukon, we feel a real need in the area of early childhood education. Almost all of our new employees for our child care centers come from abroad. They're newcomers to Canada, so this is a very costly process. It's quite a difficult process when you have for employees. As for our primary and secondary schools, up until now, we've been able to fill all of our positions with qualified teachers. We count ourselves lucky, but we have to really do a lot of recruiting. I think that we have been lucky to date because of the investments. We've been able to staff the positions, but it is going to become more and more difficult, so this is a file that is of concern to us. Very well. Recruiting and retention, you say that demands a lot of work, it costs a lot of money, and focusing on the early childhood education sector, do you think that the federal government has a role to play to ensure? I would like to recognize the work done by Leah Gazan, but do you think it's a responsibility of the federal government to ensure permanent funding so that those in charge of the daycare centers or the school boards have permanent, stable funding and that this will have a positive impact on training and recruiting? Absolutely. We would like to see greater involvement from the federal government. Francophone daycare centers in northern Canada. Well, it costs more money than it does. Its resources cost more, equipment costs more. There are a lot of additional costs involved. So we want to have greater federal involvement to support so that we can provide high caliber services. And we need to. There are crying needs here. We have difficulty meeting the demand in daycare centers. So if with the leadership of the federal government, we could provide equitable services very well. Could you tell us what your waiting lists are like? Do you have any figures to support what you're saying? Right now in Dawson City, we don't have any daycare centers in French at all. So it's a small community, but we're working on a project to start up a center. We had 8 children last year that said that would like services. In Whitehorse, it's difficult to determine the exact number of children that need spaces, but the daycare center that we have, the Petit Cheval Center in Whitehorse, has 50 children there, and we want to open up a second daycare center in Whitehorse. And do you agree with other witnesses that if we don't start with children at the daycare center, we lose out? They may not necessarily want to continue their education afterwards in French. That's 100% true. To improve the continuum of education, it is essential that we have daycare centers to help on us to continue with the vitality of our communities. They're like the nursery centers, if you like, for the French language. They prepare our children so that they can develop their language skills, so that they're prepared to get into our schools. We need to have these places. If not, we lose families from the system. Thank you very much. I don't know if Mr. Blais, do you have anything that you wish to add with respect to the Yukon reality? Just to say that the culture and language aspects are very important, and early childhood education is a priority file, because with each generation we lose people to assimilation. So if we want to reverse this continuum in the north, we need to really focus on this early childhood education, and we would like to see some federal leadership as they have done in other sectors. So we need a funding formula that reflects the rural and northern territory. Thank you very much, Ms. Ashton. We sometimes on the Hill have to interrupt our studies to go vote. If you haven't had an opportunity to share all the information that you would like us to hear, please don't hesitate to write to us. Send your information to the clerk, and I'll ensure that it gets to all committee members. I'm sorry I cut you off before you could get to your fourth argument, Mr. Henry, but all additional information that you think is necessary to help us draft a report, please don't hesitate to send it to us. Do you have a question, Mr. Henry? You raised your hand. Just a comment, Mr. Chair. In my text, I already sent my text in French to the clerk, and it's been translated into English. So you do have everything that I have to say, and I filled out the questionnaire. Thank you very much for coming. It's very important that we hear from you for our report. And 33 years, Mr. Henry, hats off to you. We will suspend until the end of the vote, and that if the witnesses wish to leave, they can. And for those who are waiting online for the second panel, this will take place after the vote. Thank you again. We are suspending.
still talking about the minority language education continuum under 1083F, standing orders, and our motion of April 24, 2024. So for our second hour today, I want to welcome our two witnesses. In person, we have, or rather by video conference, we have Michael Clare from the Provincial Francophone School Board of Newfoundland and Labrador, and in person, Brigitte Lheureux from the Fédération des Parents de la Francophonie Manitobaine, so the Manitoba Francophonie Federation of Parents. So each witness will have 5 minutes for their presentation to begin with. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes because we want to give our members a few rounds of questions because they have a great interest in the subject. So we will begin with Michael Clare. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know that your 5 minutes was as strict as you were saying because I did have 7 minutes prepared. I will start in my fourth paragraph, therefore. The Newfoundland and Labrador Francophonie is a very small component of the total population of the province, much less than 5%. And in addition, the population is scattered across the province. So we are far from having the demographic or political weight to impose our will on the provincial government and sometimes even to be recognized at all. We have 3 ways to have our rights recognized. The first is demographic and economic. We give the argument that we are a gateway for immigration and export. We attract newcomers because we speak one of the most widely spoken languages in the world. And we also tell them that the Francophonie allows us to be more visible and influential within our confederation. After 70 years, the province finally has a judge on the Supreme Court of Canada that meets the requirement of being bilingual. The second recourse is that we can turn to the courts. And the third and final recourse is the federal government. This is the level of government that defends official bilingualism across the country. Although many essential services for the minority, like education, health, and early childhood services, are mainly under the province, the federal government can encourage the provinces to better serve their linguistic minority with financial and other incentives. And then we come to the official languages in education program, our beloved OLEP. First of all, I want to thank the federal government for initiating this program and the provincial government for the consultation, or rather for participating in it. The program is essential for developing our Francophonie and for its survival. But not everything is perfect. The major shortcoming in Newfoundland and Labrador is that the French-speaking community isn't involved or consulted. From the beginning, the Francophone School Board, beginning in 28 years ago, has never been able to participate in the negotiation or management of the 3-year agreements that have been signed. To my knowledge, and our knowledge, there's never been any consultation with the community, not the kind of consultation we need to determine the community's needs. This goes squarely against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and even the principle of nothing about us without us. The unfortunate reality is that people who are not an integral part of the French-speaking community identify what they interpret as the needs of the community and communicate them unilaterally to the federal government. This makes no sense, especially since the agreement itself includes a provision that reports due to the federal government require the inclusion under Clause 5.2, which has a description of the consultations conducted with the main stakeholders for the development of the action plan, and it says that they have to be involved in the implementation and consultation. So the federal position seems to have been, and seems to still be, that since education comes under the the provincial government rather, the provinces shouldn't have to follow the instructions of the agreement. And if the province doesn't consult its Francophone community, well, too bad. In 2017, we approached the federal government to insist that the province involve the minority community more fully, but without success. And so the school board filed a lawsuit in federal court to force Canadian Heritage to fully apply 5.2 of the agreement. But 7 years later, the case has still not been heard. One of the reasons for the delay is that it is only recently that the community has come to understand in detail the workings of the agreement and the opportunities that we have missed over the years due to the lack of transparency. As a result, we insisted on a meeting with the Minister of Education to develop a new protocol that would govern the negotiation and management of the agreement. We have just recently received the response that the province is ready to meet with us. Thank you very much. Mr. Clare, you can elaborate more during our question period, I'm sure. Ms. Leroux, you have 6 minutes. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to speak to you today about the continuum in education, and especially the role of early childhood services in this continuum. First of all, I think it's important to define early childhood services. In Manitoba, we have the Parents' Federation and a partnership, and we have 2 types of services that we think are important in this context. First of all, we have the resource centers for early childhood education that provide services and programming for children and their parents in French, and they are located within the school division, and there are often children's first steps in their schooling. They provide a lot of networking opportunities and the sharing of important information. And what you're probably most interested in is the early learning and childcare centers that include both centers and family environments. The services provide parents with the opportunities to return to work, to go to school, while their children thrive by playing and learning with new friends. Quality early childhood learning services have an enormous impact not only on the child but also on our society as a whole, and they can have a significant impact on health, the economy, and the justice system. It is a very important and worthwhile investment. What's more, in a minority context, these services have major impact on the vitality of our Francophone communities. There are a few issues that I want to raise with you: partnership, access, structure, and financing. To begin with, partnerships. To ensure a smooth transition between the different parts of the continuum, it's important to stress the importance of fostering solid partnerships and constant dialogue between the various stakeholders. In Manitoba, the various education partners meet frequently to discuss the continuum, each other's needs, how we can support each other, and to make decisions together on major challenges. Another issue is access. Not all Francophone families in Manitoba have access to a Francophone daycare center. According to our latest survey of parents, access to childcare spaces is the most urgent need for our families. In our opinion, this lack of access is likely to have major repercussions on the rest of the continuum as well as within our Francophone communities. The last issue is structuring and funding. When we compare the early childhood sector to school boards and post-secondary institutions, we see that it is not the same level of structure or funding. Research clearly shows that early childhood is the critical period for brain and language development. In my opinion, if we want a real continuum in education, we need to invest in new early childhood services that include early childhood professionals and related services to manage it. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Leroux. 4 minutes. I hope that the members of the committee are as disciplined. We had to cut back on our second hour because of the votes. So I would advise everyone that you all have the same timer. So we'll start with the deputy chair, and then we'll turn to the Mr. Godin. You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Ms. Leroux. And Mr. Clare, my question is for Mr. Clare. Mr. Clare, you said that you're not consulted. It would seem that the provinces are now more open to this. Is it because they're threatened with court challenges, or I wanted to know, well, here at the Official Languages Committee, you have a chance to be consulted to improve the situation. What's the most important element that you feel we should put into the drafting of a report? You're on mute, sir. I think that the federal government should strengthen the wording of the contracts with respect to consultation, and we have to describe what we accept as being an acceptable consultation. For the time being, the provinces can decide whether or not they want to consult it. There's no pressure exerted by the federal government. And now, if we have to negotiate with the province, it would be good if the federal government put some pressure on the provinces to encourage them to be more open. I understand, Mr. Clare, but in terms of asking the federal government to put pressure on the provinces, help us help you. How can that happen? I'm not a politician, but all I can do is describe our needs. We need to be consulted. Mr. Clare, I'll stop you right there. You said you have this need, but to be more effective as a legislator, I need a solution. Can you give me a clear solution so we can force the hand, if you like, in a respectful way, the hand of the provinces to consult you to enable Canadian Francophonie to grow? Yes, the two parties are in agreement that consultation is necessary. One party doesn't enforce it, the other doesn't go ahead with the consultation. So I think we have to ensure that the province is doing its job. Maybe the community organizations or school boards can send you a letter saying, yes, we've been consulted or not. Thank you, Mr. Clare. The problem is in the Act right now, there's no lever. We have to respect jurisdictions. So it's a bit of a delicate situation, and we depend on the will of people. So that's the problem. Earlier we heard that there's good cooperation between the territorial government and the school board. But what I understand from you is that in Newfoundland and Labrador, you can't say the same thing. And now I would like to ask Ms. Leroux a question. I find it very interesting that you have really emphasized the importance of early childhood education. Another witness said that this was almost like a nursery for Francophones. Yes, we need to invest. But, mathematically speaking, the envelope is essentially the same because there's the federal government is taxpayer money. And I fully support your analysis. I know we need to invest in early childhood education because these are the resources to expand the Francophonie. How can we, what do? Take away from another sector? How can we, where could we turn in order, who could we turn to in order to invest in early childhood education? In order to expand the clientele, the potential clientele. It's not just a matter of money. There are school boards, there are universities. When it comes to early childhood education, it's nonprofit organizations that look at the needs of their clients. When we talk about structure, many parental associations have said that, well, we have 6 centers in Manitoba now, but we need investments in one spot in order to expand Francophonie. That's perhaps the best way to proceed. There are thousands of Francophones across the province, but if we can, when we talk about a structure, how can we get this structure? We need money. We need investment. We don't have individuals who are able to do this. Ms. Leroux, I'd like to share some information that I received. You have 15 seconds with respect to regional school boards. I don't know if it's in Manitoba or elsewhere, but there is a school center that decided to provide early childhood education throughout the entire day by choice, and there's savings there because transportation savings are realized. So thank you, Mr. Godin. So maybe that's one way to resolve your problem. Excellent question, but you've gone beyond your 6 minutes. I'm sorry. I have to respect the timer for everyone. Mr. Godin, 6 minutes. Thank you very much. And I'm going to use my time because I know because my other colleague took 10, but I would like to first of all thank Ms. Leroux and my colleague in Newfoundland, Mr. Clare. Mr. Clare, I see that you have been president of the school board for a long time, so I'd like to thank you for the work that you do. You talked about something that is very dear to my heart, and that's consultation. With all due respect, I'd like to begin with a questionnaire that we sent to you. The Official Languages Committee sent a questionnaire to all of the school boards in Canada. Did you receive this questionnaire? Because this is direct consultation with us to ensure that we can draft a report that meets your needs. Did you intend to fill out the questionnaire? Yes, we did receive it. And we're going to fill it out this morning, so you'll be receiving it shortly. I'm happy about that. Secondly, are you aware that the Federation of School Boards has signed an agreement for a strategic plan with Canadian Heritage to ensure that the priorities of provincial school boards' priorities are on the table? So when it comes to financing, I'm aware of the agreement, but I didn't think that it would have an impact here on the ground. So there's some work to do between the school boards and others. Before I turn to Ms. Leroux, I'd like to ask you another question. You said that there is a legal challenge against Canadian Heritage? That surprises me. Could you explain that in a few words? When we were unsuccessful in our request that the federal government put pressure on the provinces, and in 2017 we turned to the courts. This is something to think about. I never thought of that strategy but it's very interesting. Ms. Leroux, I'm going to stop the clock for a bit. I think we've lost Mr. Clare. Ah, you're back. Thank you. Pardon me, Mr. Clare. I hope it's nothing that I said. Ms. Leroux, I've been to Manitoba several times. You have a school board that's significant, and learning in French is extremely important, and it's based on the increase in population of Francophones. There's no doubt there. First question, is there a tie between you and the school and the early childhood education? In Manitoba, absolutely. We meet. Good. Are you responsible from 18 months old to 4 years old, or is it the school board of Manitoba that takes over? In Manitoba, the school board looks after the kindergarten, 5-year-olds, and 4-year-olds. There are 5 pilot projects, but it hasn't been financed yet. But we look after all the rest. So 0 to 12 years. C-36, are you aware of that piece of legislation? And it contains some very strong language for Francophone childcare centers. Could that help you? Yes, absolutely. Yes. We've used it. Yes, pardon me, because I have a lot of questions and little time. Are you aware that a few weeks ago, if I understand correctly, the Minister of Immigration had set educators for early childhood education as a priority in terms of immigrants? This is an area where we need a lot of new people. Will it help you? I'm not happy. You're not happy that it's become a priority for immigration? No. So you're very happy because now that will help you. That's good, because I just want to make sure everyone's listening. I will conclude. Now, you have talked about structure. What is the ideal structure for the continuum? The structure would be a center where we can support recruiting, retention, funding, resources. Are you talking about the school system? Oh, you're talking about the diet care centers. So, you have an HR department and a school board. We want to have the same structure for the child care centers. So, an early childhood school board. Good. You have 15 seconds. Listen. At the end of the day, I'd like to thank you for the work that you do. Please continue. It's important that we continue asking questions. I think that the questionnaire was sent out to early child care people as well. We should think about that. Because I know, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Godin is very excited. Having daycare centers in Canada is important. Mr. Beaulieu, could you please bring your boom down? You have 6 minutes, Mr. Beaulieu. Thank you. First of all, Ms. Leroux, I have a question. You said that your federation provides resource services for young children, 7 to 5. What type of services do you provide? Do you provide direct services, such as kindergarten or nursery school? Yes. At the Federation, we manage daycare centers throughout Manitoba. We also provide support to all centers who are members of the Federation. We provide professional development. We host meetings. We try to include people with special needs. On the other, when we talk about families, we have all kinds of activities for parents and children. We provide a wide range of services to help communities, 17 communities to be exact. There are a few daycare centers are outside of this as well. How many employees do you have? The federations with the 6 daycare centers, we have between 40 and 50 employees. Okay. So it's quite a big organization. So how do you think that this is just beginning in Manitoba? It's clearly inadequate, as I was saying. There are needs. The number one demand of parents, and I can provide you with figures, according to the data from Stats Canada, there are 6,900 young Manitobas from 0 to 5 who are rights holders. Right now, we provide throughout Manitoba. There are 1,500 children enrolled in the 0 to 5 years old, and so the wait times are double that for daycare centers that are francophone in Manitoba, and the number can go just up to 3,000 places. I had heard 2 testimonies from parents who were looking for daycare for their children, and we are very grateful for the efforts that the federal government has made to encourage and support childcare, but that's also increased the needs as well for daycare centers. So there's a lot of development that still needs to be done to create more spaces. So there are about almost 7,000 rights holders, and there are over 1,000 children who are attending these services, but only that's just 1/7 of the rights holders who have access to services. We're talking about wait lists that are, 400, where there are 400 on the wait lists in certain areas. In St. Anne, in a town of about 20,000 people, there are 50 children are waiting. Those who don't have access to services in French, what happens to them? What do they do then? Do they go to the English side? Yes, they seek their services in English, and we see this happening a lot. Thank you very much. Mr. Clare, you've gone to court. You're not consulted adequately. You feel that you didn't receive the amount of money you were entitled to. Could you explain further? How did you come to that conclusion? You're on mute. We received our entitlement, but we're not sure where it was invested, where it went. We want more transparency. We are underfunded. That's quite widespread. You said that you're underfunding. To what extent? 10%? Underfunded by 10%, 50%? That's a very good question, but unfortunately I don't have any numbers to support that. But generally speaking, I'm stopping the clock, Mario. Mr. Clare, I'm waiting for him to come back online. I don't know, there may be a weak signal. I can restart the clock, but it's up to you, Mr. Beaulieu. I'll wait a little while. So we'll wait about 40 seconds.
C'est sa connexion. On me dit ici que
It's a connection. We're being told that it's the connection that's a problem. No, he's gone. Ah, he came back. We don't hear you, Mr. Clare. I'll start the clock again. I'm sorry. My internet is really good. I don't understand why this is happening. You hadn't concluded. You were explaining that you didn't receive all the funding to which you were entitled. You talked about a lack of transparency. Do you think you need twice as much? Just a general figure. I don't have any supporting figures, but we can't. We know that we're not getting the funding we need.
With respect to right holders, do you know what proportion of them are attending French schools? 5 seconds, please, for your reply. Newfoundland and Labrador has the highest proportion of rights holders attending French schools in Canada. Now we will go to Ms. Ashton, please. Thank you, and welcome to our witnesses. And thank you very much, Ms. Leroux, from the Francophone Parents Federation of Manitoba. I'm a great fan of your work. A few weeks ago, I attended an event that you organized under the Franco-Manitoban Society that allowed parents and children to participate. And I saw the real diversity of our community. There were families from everywhere, all of them proud Francophones. So thank you for the work that you do. The best way to support your work is to clearly hear your recommendations and see what we can do to implement them. I tend to emphasize, as you have, early childhood education services. We had personal experience ourselves. We were on a waiting list for a long time for a child care center that is affiliated with our school, and the problem was a lack of staff. And so we never did get a place, unfortunately. And certainly this is something that speaks to me very personally.
This is also a very important issue for many that are of a Francophone background, but because of our history, we know don't necessarily speak French. We also know for many newcomers, they value their kids being able to speak French. How significant is the demand that you're seeing amongst Manitobans for their kids to be able to access daycare in French? And I would say second to that, to what extent do you believe the federal government has a permanent role to play to be able to support education at early childhood education in French, given the fact that we know French is on the decline and the extent to which we know early childhood education in French is critical to be able to get kids on track to being francophone?
Je pense que
I think that the federal government, through the agreements, the bilateral agreements with the provinces, can ensure that the provinces have do the work they need to do. The federal government needs to encourage the provinces to ensure that a certain proportion of spaces under the agreements go to Francophone children. This is probably the most effective way, that is through the federal-provincial agreement. There are no specific provisions, but up to this point, we have had very good relations with the provincial government in Manitoba. I am aware that There is going to be a plan presented soon to the provincial government to indicate where the need is greatest, and certainly priority should be given to spaces for francophones. So just to be clear, you are saying that you have a positive relationship with the current Manitoba government, but you think that the federal government has a definite responsibility for providing sustainable funding that is adequate. Yes, the federal government needs to do that, but the provinces need to be responsible for the funding going to francophones in accordance with their proportion. In the NDP, we feel that this is a very important issue and it affects everyone. And we proposed an amendment to Bill C-35. We worked very closely. My colleague worked closely with your group, and now it is in the legislation. Obviously, there needs to be sustainable long-term funding tied to it. Now, there's the issue of staff recruitment. The Collège de Saint-Boniface has a program. All of our daycare centers are working to deal with this challenge, but can you tell us what all the governments can do around the table to deal with the scarcity of daycare workers? Yes, you saw the problem in Thompson, and we do have a lack of staff. We see it a lot in rural areas and even in our towns and cities. We need more early childhood education workers. We need more people trained in our colleges. We talk a lot about the issue of wages because if we're going to recruit workers, we need to have adequate salaries. In PEI, there's been an increase in pay, and therefore there is actually an excess number of daycare workers. But so you need to have good wages, you need to have good conditions, you need to therefore have environments where people are comfortable. We need to have the right policies and so on. Thank you. We have less than 10 minutes left, so I'm going to shorten the time for everyone. Mr. Dalton, you have 3.5 minutes, please. Thank you, and thank you to Mr. Leroux and Mr. Claire for being our witnesses today. Ms. Leroux, you are the executive director of the Parents Federation for Francophones in Manitoba. So do you represent just Francophone students or also Anglophone school boards that offer immersion services? I speak on behalf of the Francophone schools and the parents, that our federation. Thank you. How many students and schools do you have represented in your federation? And can you tell us whether your funding, the number is stable or changing? Every school has its own parents group. We have 6,000 students, which is the number is increasing year after year. Thank you. You talked about early childhood services. Can you tell me what percentage of young children are in centers that offer services in French? We don't have accurate statistics about how many Francophone children attend daycare in French as opposed to English. I wanted to know really how many rights holders actually go in one stream or the other. We don't really have those figures. You talked a little bit about immigration. Can you tell us whether there is an increase in numbers from that stream? We know that newcomers are last on the list for daycare services. So if we are going to invite immigrant families, we need to make sure we have the services they need, because if they put their names on a list and they're the last on the list, then they're going to end up in Anglophone daycare services and then in immersion programs. And this has an impact on our Francophonie. I understand. Madame Koutrakis, you have 3.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to come back to the question asked earlier by Mr. Godin to Mr. Claire, then. It's really important for our study. If you could tell the province what your needs are directly. What are they? Funding, infrastructure? If you could give us some concrete example, it would help us a lot in our study. So I will give you time now to share your thoughts. Mr. Clare. Thank you very much for that question. I should begin by saying that I don't want to be too pessimistic about our relations with the province. It's pretty good. We get along pretty well. But when it comes to the official language education program, this is a long-standing issue in the sense that we aren't consulted. We don't know where the decisions come from. And what we would like to have is a good discussion so that we can understand the needs of our Francophone students and schools and then turn that over to the province. But I imagine, Mr. Clare, you know what those needs are. Can you give us concrete examples of what those needs are? That is a question that should be posed to the head of our school board. But we do know that there are positions that haven't been filled. We know that we would like to have more schools. We want to be able to recruit students. Is there an issue with lack of funding or rather lack of staff? Well, both. We certainly have a need for more workers, and in Newfoundland and Labrador, we know that we have the highest proportion of rights holders who do attend school in French. So we could get a lot more students if we had the means. Thank you very much for being there, and thank you for your work. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Koutrakis. And you have 1 minute, Mr. Beaulieu. I'm sorry. I have a question for Ms. Leroux. You talked about Francophone immigration and that there isn't enough room in kindergartens and daycare centers, that you lose them to Anglophone institutions. Yes, what we see is that parents will choose an immersion school. My partner works in that area, and often these families have children that speak only English because they spend all day in English. So either they have to send their children to an English school or a French school, but since they don't have strong French, then they have to have extra services to strengthen their French language. We don't have the capacity to do that. Thank you. Ms. Ashton, you have time for one question. One quick question. To what extent is it essential and a priority to deal with the lack of daycare spaces and other needs to prevent this decline in French vitality? It is a priority to address all these issues in order to be able to recruit and retain Francophone students. I don't think there is a decline. The population may be decreasing, but I don't think that's the case. I think we have to put the emphasis on early childhood services because that's what will support the other stages. So I just have a little clarification. Ms. Leroux, you talked about your three priorities: partnership, access, and structures and funding. What would you like to say about partnerships? Well, with the universities, certain umbrella organizations, Canadian Parents for French, and let me think, and a division that has immersion programs. And we've talked about the continuum for a long time in Manitoba. Mr. Clare, you talked about a constitutional right that there had not been consultations. Is that what you meant about the unconstitutional approach? I wanted to say that the provinces need to be forced by the federal government to do more. But do you have any legal opinions to indicate that your constitutional rights have been infringed upon? No, that was my personal opinion. So unfortunately, we never have enough time, but thank you very much for your appearances and your testimony. If you have any other points that you want to share with us, please feel free to send information to our clerk. And before closing the meeting, I just want to indicate to our members that by December 19th, we would like to have our witness list for local media, that study. So we won't be here at that time, but please think about any witnesses you would like to propose for our local media study. Thank you very much to our witnesses. We are adjourned.